You're listening to a Soul One podcast.
And we're back. Okay, we're rolling, Taylor. We weren't sure if this was going to work for a second, but we're back from our post fan question episode with a lot of movie reviews. So we're back to work, Taylor. We've got to work this episode.
Yep, back to the mine. I said that recently to a coworker, and she went, "What?" I said, "Back to the mines." She had never heard that. She had never heard that phrase.
No.
Anyways, we're back to the grind, back to the mines, reviewing new and possibly old movies. Mike, I have a relatively new movie. You have two.
One new movie, one kind of new, and then one old.
Nothing wrong with that. Nice little mix.
All in the horror and thriller genre. I did not leave Halloween.
And mine's a body horror. So clearly the Halloween fun continues into mid-March.
That's right. Yeah. Because we're just going to keep going for as long as possible. One of the things that's interesting about my movies is one of them I've never heard of, but it's definitely new. Like, I think it just dropped on Netflix. So I just decided to throw it on. One I'd been waiting for, but just never came until now to our streaming services. So right. I don't know if it was just in the US. And then, as I mentioned last week, the third one is Megan, which I finally watched. It's not great. I would give it a skip it, honestly. Like, it just wasn't very interesting. Like, it just was kind of like, meh.
People liked it, and I think there might be a sequel in the works.
People liked it because I think it had a viral TikTok dance.
Oh.
That was like, honestly, like 3 seconds of the movie. Like, it wasn't, yeah.
Is Anna Kendrick in that movie?
No, it's Allison Williams.
And Get
Out.
Get Out,
yeah. And she was fine, but no one was particularly good in this movie. Except for Ronnie Chung. I don't know if you know him. He's one of the hosts of The Daily Show now, and he's like he's been in just a bunch of stuff. He'll always have like a cameo. He's a comedian.
I'm sure if I saw his face, I would be like, "Oh yeah," but the name isn't bringing he was very anything good for me.
I'm always up for a Ronnie Chung cameo / small bit part.
So that movie, that's your review. It was kind of middle of the line, wah. Not even middle of the line, more wah.
I would say like it could have been an airplane it, but I feel like it's a skip it because the movies I'm about to talk about are better versions of what this is. And there are better versions of like even creepy doll characters out there than
Brahms.
Like, I just feel like it kind of moves to a skip it for me just because there's other options available.
I just said Brahms, but I think the name of that movie is actually The Boy.
The Boy.
That one's phenomenal.
Yeah, like The Boy. I can't think of any others, but
Chucky.
There are other Chucky. Yeah, sure, Chucky. Even like Annabelle. Like, there's just other better versions of this, and this doll isn't really possessed. It's just AI gone wrong.
I was gonna say she's a robot. She's not even really a doll.
That's right. Yeah, and again, there's even just better like AI robot movies.
There you go. So, sorry, it's a skip it.
It's a skip it. Yeah, Megan from last year, I think. I don't know when this movie came out. I think it was last year. I think it's not that old.
I think it's probably a 2023 release, but there were like Party City was advertising Megan costumes, so it made enough of a hit in the zeitgeist that people released costumes for it. Well, there's that.
It is what it is, but it wasn't particularly good. And I can't wait to hear about your movie because The Substance is getting a lot of interest all around the place. So that's going to be an interesting one to talk about.
Are we going to dive right in, or do you have a couple of fan questions for me?
No, we won't dive right in. I just thought we would banter back and forth about our movies, but that's fine. There's just I've seen some interesting things about The Substance. Like, there's a lot of like memes and interesting facts that I'm interested to ask you about. So
I haven't seen any of the memes, but I've definitely seen a lot of headlines, like it being like the most outrageous movie of the year, Demi Moore, so brave, like very like typical kind of headlines. But it definitely, this movie has a lot of buzz around it, and rightfully so in a in a lot of ways. This movie definitely will not be for everyone. It's a very niche film, I would say.
Okay. I don't think there. Anyway, doesn't matter. I was gonna. I was
None
just
of our
about to
listeners
start.
are part of
I
that
was.
niche.
Yeah, I was just about to start something, but I decided I wouldn't. One of the things that I think all of our movies have in common, because there's four, including Megan in this, because I have two others that I'll fully review. They all have. I'm pretty positive, like a sort of female protagonist who's going through some kind of physical change slash, that's where like there's body horror elements to all of our movies.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's
this is
mine too. Both of mine, not to your extent, but both of my movies that I'm reviewing have like body horror elements to it.
this mine was 100% a body horror movie. Like it wasn't like
That's what I've
it
heard.
wasn't like a like elements of, it's like no, 100% this is billed
Yeah.
as a body horror. And
Yeah.
I will say, disclaimer, body horror is not my typical genre. So we'll get into it during my review, but it was a viewing experience, Mike.
I bet. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Like I've heard it's just an experience to watch. But then there's just some funny memes and quotes and things I've seen that we'll talk about. So yeah, you're reviewing The Substance. I'm reviewing a movie called Don't Move, as well as Pray for the Devil.
I've heard of Pray for the Devil, spelled Prey, kind of a, what did they call that? Double entendre, play on words.
Right.
But I have not. What was the other one?
Don't Move.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
New. This one just came out. Like this came out on Netflix about a week ago. And it's kind of a low budget movie, but produced by Sam Raimi.
Okay, so horror.
Horror.
Like
horror.
Yep. And Evil Dead, Sam Raimi.
That's right. Yeah. And you know, it's a low budget movie, and I'll get into it. And you can.
That's kind of how he started, though. That's like his thing.
For it being low budget, like the money just wasn't spent on the cast. Like they shot on location. The like quality of the movie is totally fine. Like you could tell that's what he built on, like atmosphere. And you can, even though he didn't direct it, like you can tell Sam Raimi was like heavily involved in how this was going to work, and you know, to some good successes. So there's lots to talk about with that movie. So yeah, we'll dive into all that. But you're anxious to get a couple more fan questions.
You know, I'm dying to, Mike. If I don't badger you, we're going to have another mailbag episode next month, because you're just going to let them pile up.
Well, there's just a lot to kind of organize. And it's just, the problem is they come in from 3 different locations now. And
yes,
I
appreciate, as the producer, you have a very hard job. And as the talent, my job is very easy. So
that's right.
Right. I understand.
The talent never appreciates how hard we work behind the scenes to make this work. Okay, so let's dive into some fan questions then. So first one comes from Jake, who wrote in and said, I'm actually going to also join in the club of people not knowing some terminology that's being used. I didn't know what fan casting was, but I was so confused by mailbag. Because I just thought, do people really mail people things anymore? And I thought maybe you had a P.O. box that we were supposed to write into.
I love that. No, just a symbolic mailbag, a virtual mailbag, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say it's just more, that's just what we call it. I've heard like other podcasts have called it the pod bag, but I don't think
I don't like that at all.
Yeah, that doesn't make as much sense to me.
If anything, it should be like an inbox episode, because the messages came to our inbox.
Yeah, that also isn't really.
That's why we call it a mailbag. It just sounds right. Again, I guess we're really showing our age, Mike. I heard a new term today that the generation that's like, there's a generation below us, because we're millennials, Mike. There's like the Gen Z's, and then there's another generation below them called Zoomers.
Oh,
so maybe Jake's a Zoomer.
Wait, wait. We're millennials, and then the next one is Gen Z,
Or they're like
Gen X.
essentially. I don't know the Gen X. I don't know the alphabet letter, but I think there's already two gens below us. Essentially, we're so old that there's two gens below us.
Oh, how do they define a generation?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Couple decades or something? Like it's a little
I don't think
specific.
it's a perfect science because
No.
there's people older than us that are millennials, and I'm like, no, our experiences are different. We're
Yes,
not.
absolutely. I think honestly, I think after about 5 years, that's when things start to
Well,
really,
even
really
you and
change.
I, we're both in our 30s, and sometimes I feel like you mention things that I'm like, no, no, not quite.
Really? Okay. I heard it.
every every once in a while.
I heard a kid use a term that they were like, "Oh, it's like a new term," and I'm like, "No, that's an old one."
Oh,
Like things are starting to
the
repeat.
slang is
Yeah, where I'm
circling
like that.
back.
Yeah, where I'm like that slang is from the '70s. Like it's not.
That's our
It,
parents' slang.
yeah, like that's not anything. Yeah, exactly. That's not anything like we would have said. But it starts to make a go around. Like I think there's almost like a circular thing that happens where certain things kind of come back. Because you know how like there's always been like this 80 craze. That's happening
Hmm.
now with the 90s, where people are
Yep.
like, "Oh, 90s." It's like there's like a vibe.
Our childhood is now nostalgia. Like now is
Doesn't feel
retro.
like it. Doesn't feel like it. But thank you, Jake, for that comment and inquiry.
Oh, and to
Um,
answer your question, no, we don't have a PO box number. Although that
yes,
would be fun.
yo, we don't. Yeah, we're definitely not going to ever have a PO box.
Mike can't
Um,
manage the three places where we get the
that's right.
questions. Could you
Actually,
imagine
if I
we
had to
also
go pick up mail, like once a week, I gotta go slum it to wherever PO boxes are.
the
I don't even
Shoppers
know.
Drug Mart?
Yeah, the shoppers, is that where they are? I don't even know where a PO box would be. Having to like go find a PO box, no, absolutely ridiculous. Next fan question comes from Ashley, who I think might have written in last time. But anyway, Ashley says, one of the issues that I have, honestly, with new movies recently is I just have such a hard time with the timing of the films. I know you've both brought up that sometimes shorter is better, but there's too many times where I just feel like a movie was rushed and just thrown together, and I just left there going, well, that was a waste of 90 minutes. I don't know if there's necessarily a universally good timing that a movie could have, but I just feel like they're either too short or they're too long. What is the perfect amount of time for a movie? Well, you're a big 90 minutes person, Taylor.
For
Like
me,
you,
it's 90 minutes to 2 hours at the sweet spot. Anything
yeah,
over 2 hours, and you're probably not telling a very good story. I've talked a lot about this on air. I think part of the problem is editing. They fired all of the good editors, and I think that speaks to sloppy 90-minute movies where it feels like everything's been thrown together in a blender. Well, if they had a very strong editor, I'm assuming a director would have filmed enough footage that the editor can then put together a coherent story.
usually.
So I would argue that a sloppy 90 minutes is either poor writing or poor editing. Like,
And you have to remember, depending upon what you're seeing, there's so much pressure on certain studios.
sure, to put it out.
Marvel and Disney, the shorter the film, the more space they can get in movie theaters, the more times your show can like run each evening. So the more money they can make. Like that's a real thing
So
that's
yeah,
coming out of Marvel.
okay.
So,
So those ones are just slap the in
slap together.
Ashley's summation, those would be the slap together movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that
But
makes
I
sense.
I agree with you. Like I think 90 minutes to 2 hours it should be enough to tell a nice cohesive story.
Unless it's like a big genre movie. Like
Sure.
I have no problems with um historical epics, like a big fantasy movie. I Gone with the Wind is one of my favorite movies, and I think that movie is close to 4 hours. It's over
Yeah.
2 DVDs. But those
If
movies
it's
to me,
compelling enough, then
yes,
it's fine.
those are like once a generation type movies. Like something like, because Gladiator 2 is making a lot of headlines right
Mm.
now. I think the original Gladiator movie, that movie's probably well over
Yep.
2 hours,
Long. Yeah. Yeah.
but
I mean,
that's a compelling
both
movie.
both Dune movies are 2.5 hours, and they don't feel like it. Like the two Dune movies, I really enjoyed them, and they don't feel long at all.
But any other, if we're talking just kind of like a standard drama or a standard comedy or a standard horror, 90 minutes to 2 hours.
There's
Anything
no
more?
reason why a comedy needs to be over 90 minutes.
No!
There's no reason. Yeah, none at all. All right. Next question. Okay, so this one comes from Peter. Oh, this is a good one. Not that the others weren't good, but this is an exciting question.
Boo to the other two, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. What I meant was, I think
this is juicy. This is a juicy one.
So Peter says, I know you haven't talked about him for a while, but I thought it was interesting to come back to conversations that you're having about certain actors and the roles and the types of roles that they're taking. One of the things that I'm noticing right now is Glen Powell seems to be taking a more wide variety of roles. And now I'm hearing rumors that he wants to take on more action roles and even dip more into comedy. He's somebody who's done a lot of action thrillers and big blockbusters. He's done a few niche things. Do you feel like he's the kind of actor who must get into dramas and more serious films to be taken seriously? Or could he follow in the Brendan Fraser, Chris Pratt, Tom Cruise neck of the woods and still be considered a fantastic performer?
Well, Tom Cruise has been in some dramas, certainly. Like I think people in the 80s and 90s, but I would say that his recent career has all been like the Mission Impossible kind of
But Tom Cruise has never been considered like one of the best actors of our time.
That's true.
More just like a movie star. So I feel like this question is asking, like, does it hurt someone's career to go down a certain trajectory versus not? Because I think the interesting thing about the Tom Cruise reference is I'm pretty sure I read an interview where Glen Powell said to Tom Cruise, I want your career. Like Tom Cruise was trying to get him to do Top Gun and Glen Powell wasn't going to do it. And Tom Cruise asked him, like, okay, like what kind of career do you want? He said, yours. So I think he has interests that are more aligned with that. But everything I've seen him in, he's pretty good. Like it's not, I feel like he does have other layers to him that he doesn't need to. But I would argue Chris Pratt and Brendan Fraser have layers too, though. Like I wouldn't say they're
I think of the three, actors. Chris Pratt probably has the least amount of layers. Like
if we were
gonna,
three that we mentioned,
I could see him trying to. I would almost compare him to a Brad Pitt, who can do comedy, can do drama, can do action. But
does Glen Powell have to do like a drama or win a big award for his career? Like, do you think that has to happen? Because Brad Pitt has awards and he does more quote unquote serious movies. Like he does do those.
That's so what's the okay, so I'm just thinking, like, does he have to be like an Oscar worthy actor in order to be considered a movie star? No.
Right. No.
But if he's trying to model himself after someone like Tom Cruise, or like my comparison, Brad Pitt, I think it's just inevitable that he's going to try his hand at drama. I think like there's nothing wrong with just like sticking to your lane, but he's clearly willing to try just about any genre. But he hasn't been in like a straight drama yet. Am I right?
Not that
it's mostly. No. I mean, I guess you could consider like Top Gun a drama, but it's more of a like an action movie, right?
More of an action movie, yeah. I mean, I would say that his role in Top Gun, like, had a lot of acting in it.
He was the villain, right?
Yeah, he was sort of the more antagonist.
The antagonist.
But I wouldn't say he's a villain, but he was kind of the rival.
The Iceman.
Yeah, precisely. He was the Iceman character. But I feel like it's not like corny, crazy action. Like that movie had a lot more depth to it.
So what was the original question?
The original question was whether or not he has to do that to be taken more seriously as an actor or a performer. He says performer, but
No, I don't think he has to do anything, because if you read the headlines, people love him. Like, he's already well loved and is being touted as like the next movie star.
I don't know
So
why
whether or
we
not
would
it's
be like.
deserved,
I don't think we're concerned about him.
yeah, I think he's doing
Right?
okay.
Like, I can tell you right now, I have spent zero time worrying about his career.
He is
Like,
acting
he's
a lot.
doing fine.
He's getting a lot of movies. I don't think he needs to do anything to be taken seriously. Like, I would say that he has been accepted into Hollywood with open arms. We are going to see a lot of Glen Powell in the next decade. Um, but I don't think he has to take on drama roles, but I think inevitably he will.
You think he
That's
will?
my,
Yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
going to try to develop, you know, he seems to be like an actor's actor. Like, I could see him wanting to get an Oscar.
Yeah, certainly for me to look at someone and say you're an actor versus a movie star, you'd have to do that.
Yeah.
Like you,
So,
so maybe for me, yes, but he would have to do a drama for him to be considered anything else. But I don't think he feels any pressure to do anything.
yeah, and I think he is probably making bank and is laughing all the way there.
Yeah, yeah, we're not too concerned. Okay, we'll do one more. This is from an anonymous writer, anonymous viewer, who says, have you heard anything about the new cast for the next Christopher Nolan movie? So far, Zendaya and Tom Holland are both signed on, and it looks like it's going to be an amazing cast. I don't know anything about it. Have you heard anything about the new movie?
No. I want to know what news platform they're on, because I'm pretty dialed. I normally, my algorithm's built pretty well. I did not know Christopher Nolan was making a new movie. I did not know that they were attached. I thought they were going to ask if I've seen the new cast for the reboot of Cruel Intentions.
We got to talk about that. We have to talk about Cruel Intentions. We got to talk about that. Okay, so here it is. I just did a quick search. Anne Hathaway and Zendaya are the latest to join the new Christopher Nolan film. It's going to be I thought it was a mystery. It's mysterious. We don't know anything about it, but so far the cast is Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway.
Definitely like a who's who of like old and new, or I would say like established and up and coming. That's like
they're keeping it pretty under wraps because they're not even starting shooting till 2025. So it's slated to come out in either 2026 or 2027. So I'm
not a Christopher Nolan head the way you are, so I have no emotional. What do they say? I have no skin in the game in this one.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I've liked many of his movies, but I'm not like a bro about it.
But I'm sure you're gonna be
some people. Christopher Nolan,
he's
Zack Snyder, where they're just like, oh, I'm going to see.
It's like they're Martin Scorsese.
That's
like,
right. Yeah. No, yeah, I don't feel that way about it. But yeah, I'll go. Of course, I'll go see it.
Don't have to twist my arm.
No, of course not. No, I'll be there. But I'm just,
So we don't even
somewhere between a Christopher Nolan bro and the person who said, "Is this a movie about a planet with a bunch of apes on it?" Like, I'm somewhere in between.
And so we don't even know like basic plot point. Like, we don't.
Nothing. The two articles I'm looking at right now say it's mysterious and we don't know anything. It's being kept
safe to say it won't be a comedy.
No. He does dramas, so it's going to be a drama. It's just whether or not, like, because he does dramas that are thrillers versus dramas that are more just straight up dramas. So I feel like it's somewhere in that category. But these are all good actors.
Sure.
Like, should be interesting. I'm on board for that. No problem with it. Shall we quickly talk about the Cruel Intentions remake? So first of all, it's a series.
Yeah.
Can you stretch that story out to be a series? Like, that's
apparently so. What was it was it last week when the person wrote it and being like, I think a lot of the problems can be solved by making things into a series. I think this is an IP where, like, no, you're probably fine, because that movie probably clocked in at like 92 minutes, the one from the 90s. So yeah, it's also the cast, like the three leads, Sebastian, this is the only main character I can remember, and then his stepsister, and then like his love interest. These are actors I have never seen before, Mike.
Well, it's TV too. Like once it was for like at first when I watched the trailer and I thought it was a movie and I thought, oh, these are all just like young actors I've never heard of. But then when I saw it was a TV series, I'm like, oh, TV money. Okay.
So are you saying like lower budget?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And is it Netflix or is it like it's going to go to, is it a streaming platform?
It's a streaming one, but I can't remember which one it's going to.
I also I'm not really interested in seeing like updated versions. You know what I mean?
I feel like the one that we have is
Fine.
more or less what you can do with it. Like I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, it's Amazon Prime. It's an Amazon Prime one. So that's interesting because they have a lot of money and they do put money into their shows. Like the Lord of the Rings show, like, and they put the Jack Ryan series. So that's interesting.
And I think
I've never heard of any of these people.
I haven't heard of any of these people. I think that they're starting to cultivate a little bit of a acting roster, or you know, like having in-house actors the way Netflix does, but people I'm not familiar with, and I haven't checked their IMDb to know. I don't know, it's kind of like when they tried to reboot Heathers and make it modern, like now times, and it completely flopped.
If you want to do that, do what they did with Mean Girls, which is like based on kind of the same sort of thing. Like if you want to do Heathers, they like a Mean Girls is like a Heathers-ish thing. If you want to do Cruel Intentions, just do your own thing and have it be kind of like that. Because they even, like I would describe, they did all that with those weird shows like
Riverdale, where they kind of update, but they made it a more of a mystery. It's also interesting because Cruel Intentions is actually based on, I think, Dangerous Liaisons, which is a French book from like the 1700s. Yeah, why don't just go back to the original source material?
Sure.
And then update it, or like do whatever you want to do. Like now it's going to be set in 2025 or 2024 or whatever. But it be Dangerous Liaisons for 2024, not Cruel Intentions for 2024.
I just feel this genre of like TV or movie doesn't work anymore.
The like updated teen story, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really love the original Cruel Intentions, and I think it more or less stands up. I haven't watched it in like the last 5 years, so it's hard to say if in the political climate it's still acceptable, but definitely one of my favorite 90s movies. So again, it's like, why take, I guess they're being like, oh, Cruel Intentions for the Zoomers. I'm going to use that now that I know the name for that generation. I don't, just give them a different story, or like we said, go to the original IP and then update the story. Like, why take a very iconic, because like you and I probably are not going to watch this remake, right? Maybe that's the point. I don't know. I think it's stupid, and we'll see.
Let's dive into our movies, because we have 3 we've got to get to. So we'll come back to this. I'm sure, because we're not going to watch it, I'm sure we'll just hear things about it and talk about Cruel Intentions later. But
yeah, I'm interested to see the initial reviews of it. But
yeah, sure, and maybe that'll spark interest. But the trailer didn't look good, so. I'm not. I already watched all of Euphoria. Like I think I'm too old, you know? Like I just don't want to sit through another one.
That might be us, like, oh, teens doing drugs and having sex. Like it just, as a 30-plus-year-old, I'm like, no.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm a mom now. I'm old.
I went through all of Euphoria and it was good. Like I'm not saying the show is bad at all. It's just clearly like it's just not really of interest to me. You know what I mean? Like I stuck it out and got through because I had this weird thing. I got to finish it. Yeah. And I wanted to see where it goes. And again, I'm not saying it's bad. Don't come after me. I know what Euphoria is like. It's a good show with some great performances and launched a bunch of great careers. And it's really interesting. But I just don't think it's of interest to me, no matter how good you make it.
I guess it's kind of that. I would almost describe that genre as teens behaving badly.
Yeah.
And
I don't I don't
it's
really care.
no.
Right? Go live your life. Like buy a car or something. I don't care. Um yeah, I don't want to get to the point where I'm like, get a job, but that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, this would be solved if you were working more. Um, so let's get into our movies. We got 3 to go through. So why don't I start with Don't Move, and then we'll go on to the substance, and then Pray for the Devil.
Sure.
So Don't Move, the movie you've never heard of,
Mm-hmm.
is about a woman who goes through a tragedy. Her son is dead, and you learn that right at the beginning of the movie. That's how the setup. She's actually she's considering jumping off of a cliff,
Okay.
and this guy comes up to her and talks her out of it. This kind of nice, well-assuming person, also like has a tragic part of his past that he opens up and shares. Talks her out of it. Turns out he's a serial killer, and he only talked her out of it to kidnap her,
Hmm.
and kind of take her to this
You know what?
kind of remote area to kill her.
Maybe I have heard of this movie. Did this movie come out in the summer and have a lot of buzz about it?
I don't know if it came out in this. It just came onto Netflix, so I don't
Okay.
know what. Like it could have been elsewhere. It feels like a film festival movie. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Where it's like it's of decent quality shooting, but a lot of like unknowns and like just
Right.
trying to get it out there. So it might have done some festivals. But basically, what happens and why it's called Don't Move is the guy drugs her with this thing that within 20 minutes she will be paralyzed and be
Ooh.
unable to move. Now it doesn't last like forever. Like it's like has its own kind of life, but basically the entire film is a chase of her with her body shutting down, trying to get away in the woods from this serial killer, and that is the entire premise of the movie. Like it's really
Anx-
it's like 4 or 5 character.
Anxiety-inducing.
Like yeah, it's very very well done in terms of building tension. Um, which again, like I mentioned, it's low budget. It's all shot in these woods, in and out of a car, in and out of like a log cabin. Like it's all very like found things, right? Like it's not like they're
Mm-hmm.
building lots of sets and they're shooting on location, but it's well, like the cameras are all like high quality and stuff, but it's all like relatively unknown actors. Like there's only like 4 or 5 in the whole movie. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very like concise, and it's mainly her and this killer who's sort of chasing after her. Um, and it's Taylor. It's really well done.
There you
Like
go.
it's surprising of how well done it is. Where the premise is, her body shutting down, but how can she run away and escape them? And it's pretty creative, like how they figure out moments where she does escape for a period of time, and then somehow gets kind of rolled back in. And basically, the entire thing is he's trying to get her out to this location to kill her, but he does. You learn that he's been doing this to women for a very long time. Um,
I'm
yeah, go
seeing
ahead.
here that Finn Whitrock is in this movie, and I think he's from American Horror Story.
Oh,
His
okay.
face
Like
looks
so as a
familiar to me.
movie actor, a TV actor. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't. I didn't recognize anyone. But yeah, that Kelsey Azabil, I think is the name of the lead. Yeah, Finn. What did you say his name was? Finn Whitrock. Yeah,
Whitrock? Yeah, he's
he
from
plays the murderer. Yeah,
I recognize him from American Horror Story, but I
okay,
couldn't
yeah,
I couldn't tell you anything else that he's in.
yeah. So he's the serial killer. He's the one kind of chasing her throughout this kind of all these kind of events. And it's what I liked about the movie was I felt like it wasn't talking down to the audience ever. Like it had so many subtleties in it, and things you just overhear and you yourself can put it together. Like it doesn't just like spew out his story. You sort of put his story together and you
Okay.
figure out what's going on with him and you figure that out. Unlike, a movie like Trap, where it's just like dialogue dump. Because this movie kind of reminded me of Trap a lot, but Trap had, more well-known actors in it. And frankly, that's where it lost some points for me. Is I thought the performers were fine, like the actors were fine. She was very, very good at like making you feel and think things with barely being able to move your body. But I still think this movie would have just benefited by like 2 a little bit more seasoned actors. You know what I mean? Like I was the whole time I was imagining this with two people who were like, even if it was like someone like Josh Hartnett in his role, and like, I don't know, like a young woman actor in that
What
role.
I'm hearing is just that the acting wasn't at the
Not
caliber of the story.
No, I thought the story was really good. The creativity with directing was very good. The cinematography was good. Like everything was really good, but the actors felt like here's the budget crunch. We just got to
Right.
find who we can find. Um, because like again, it's something that I think it doesn't matter if you're a recognizable name or not, but recognizable names are recognizable for reasons, and usually it's talent. So I just felt like so he clearly has been in some TV shows and stuff. It did feel like two like TV actors in
Mm.
a movie that was probably a little bit better than what they were given. And that's where it kind of lost points for me because I did think it was well written. I did like the story. I thought it did a really good job of keeping the tension. Like there were a couple moments where I truly didn't know where it was going, which is kind of a rare thing. So it really did a great job there. But yeah, the acting, even there's like some cameos of people they meet along the way. Everyone was kind of just like, like if you were just anyone else, like it might have been a
It
little
would have
better.
elevated the movie.
Yeah, like to a level of that I just didn't get from this. So for me, Don't Move. It's a stream it. I think it was pretty good. It will keep you interested for the 90 minutes. Like it's a short movie, but it's really concise. It doesn't have to be longer. It tells a really good, compelling story. And so I think it's still worth a watch. I think it's a stream it for me.
So I watched one of my most anticipated movies of the year, The Substance. This movie, I think, for people who are like kind of like movie nerds, Mike, this has probably been on their radar. But for like an average moviegoer, I don't think this movie is probably as big for them. So
Really? Okay.
I get the sense. I don't know. Like I don't think this was in the Cineplex, but it was at the screening room in Kingston. So, but I
Hmm.
could correct me if I'm wrong. Did you see it at your local theaters being advertised?
Yeah, like it's at the two independent ones.
Right, but not
I
like the
don't
big.
not the multiplex.
Yeah.
No, not that I saw, but definitely the two independent theaters had it. Yeah.
And this definitely feels like a movie for movie buffs and not for the casual movie watcher. So I said at the very beginning of the episode that this is like this is going to be a super um niche population who is going to like this movie. Like this is what we would call on the old show a Tyler Vance movie. Um it is very weird. It is very grotesque and but it's also very compelling. So the basic premise is there's this Demi Moore. I think it's Demi Moore. Oh my gosh, I could be
Yeah, it's
okay,
Demi
yes.
Moore.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So Demi Moore plays, I want to say her name's Elizabeth Sparkle, who's like a older actress who has just turned 50, and she was super famous, and now at this point of her career she's doing like an aerobics show.
Mm.
And Dennis Quaid is like her boss, I guess, like the head of the studio or the head of the network who is ordering, or like a network executive. And on her 50th birthday she gets fired, and Dennis Quaid says that, you know, they need young, hot, essentially not her. She's aged out of the role, and he is doesn't mince words about it. So,
Mm.
um, at the rest of the movie is essentially her coming to terms with that, and how she comes to terms with that is that she discovers this new medical treatment called the substance that essentially I don't want to give up too much of the plot away, but essentially there's like another version of her, and the rest of the movie is essentially like her coming to terms with the fact that she's quote unquote past her prime.
Well, and I can say that from the trailers.
Yes.
There's the time limits, there's rules to it. Like, that has been...
So that's all explained, and that's all explained. Right. Okay, so I'm not spoiling anything if it's in the trailer. Because I actually haven't seen a trailer for this movie. I've just seen a lot of discourse online. So, essentially, there's all these rules about this substance, and the rest of the movie is her kind of coming to terms with this younger self, you could say. And that's pretty much, it's a very simple concept of the movie. Like, the plot is very light, and I would say that there's very minimal character development. It almost felt like, because essentially you're going kind of between Demi Moore and, do you know the name of that actress?
Margaret Qualley?
Yes. So she plays like the young version, I guess you could say. And essentially it kind of goes back between the two of them, but it's almost like you're watching montages. Like, a lot of the movie is just like the montage, right. Because essentially like they each get a week. So you see, but it's
the same it's the same person, just a younger version of...
Essentially they say like there's like a voiceover of the medicine or the treatment. It's like, you are the Matrix and you inject this serum, and it essentially like is like a clone of yourself, but it's like the perfect version of yourself. So like younger, hotter, perfect. And so the whole premise of the movie is that there is no me and them. It's like you are one person, right? But like, obviously, you know, shenanigans ensue, right?
That's like, what I assume.
Yeah, like obviously,
that's not a spoiler. Something's gonna happen.
Yeah, and like you can tell in it's a body horror movie. They firmly emphasize you are one. You have to switch back. No exceptions. So already you know at the beginning of the movie that rules are going to be broken.
That's right.
And there's and there's going to be consequences, right? So
yeah, that's right.
I would say that this movie I loved the cinematography. I thought it was shot very, very well. I liked the production design a lot. It kind of takes place in this like fake LA. And I say fake LA because like it snows at one point. I don't think it snows in LA. And you can't really tell what time it's like. Is this the future? Is this the past? So it kind of takes place in this sort of fictional world, and everyone but Demi Moore is like caricatures. Like, it's like everyone's on steroids in terms like every single man in this movie is a complete buffoon. And I think that's intentional. And like they act like buffoons. Like, it's kind of over the top acting. Like, Dennis Quaid is definitely chewing the scenery. And I would even say, what's her name? Margot Qualley? Qualley? Yeah. Even she felt a little bit, she felt almost like a surface caricature, which I think is the fault of the direction, because if they're the same person, it should have been, their performances should have been mirrored more closely together. That's like, that would be my major critique in terms of direction, that if you really want to emphasize they're the same person, they made them seem too different in the movie. So why this movie is not for everyone. Number one, it is highly stylized. You have some very interesting acting choices, which I think were intentional and do work for the movie, because this movie's trying to tackle themes about aging in Hollywood, sexism towards women, stuff like that, but everything's like heightened, right? Like, it's almost a satire of that kind of stuff. So in the context of this movie, I think that makes sense. That is going to be a turnoff for some people off the hop. Like, when Dennis Quaid comes in, someone's going to be like, well, what am I watching?
Right.
The other reason, the elephant in the room, is that this is a body horror. And as far as body horrors go, to me, this was pretty graphic. You have like people like pulling their own teeth out. At certain
I've heard
points.
It's pretty graphic. Like, it's very, very graphic. Yeah.
And like, that's not, I think, I've seen my fair share of Cronenberg. Not that I've seen like his whole movie catalog, but like I've seen body horror. It's not for me. I don't really like gross out stuff, and like to me this was like very like gross out, like seeing someone pull their own teeth out, like ooh, gives me like like chills. And because like one character comes from the other character, you know what I mean, like there's like bodies are kind of ripping open, and then it just like, yeah, that definitely does not sit well with every person. It doesn't sit well with me. It's not my typical cup of tea. The other major critique of this movie that I have is that it kind of felt like it went off the rails at the end of the movie, which was kind of how I felt about Longlegs. Two movies that I think started off really, really strong. We're doing really interesting things with genre convention, production design, cinematography, everything is there. And then both stories for me, poor writing, it just kind of goes off the rails. This movie also clocks in at 2 hours and 20 minutes. For a body horror movie, I don't think it needs to be this long, especially because you don't get much character development. I think they could have achieved what they wanted to achieve with fewer back and forths between the characters, because it's evident from the very beginning of the movie essentially what's going to happen, right? That, you know, they have all these rules for this medicine. It's very evident that one of them is going to break the rules. And so yeah, I think they could have made it a little bit tighter, and the ending to me was just kind of a little bit too too outrageous. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. All that being said, I think there's enough in this movie that if you like body horror, if you like sort of out there movies, very original movies, if you're looking for kind of a zany, like a true movie-going experience, this is a see it. Even though there's problems with it, it's probably one of the more original movies of this year. And I think when it succeeds really well, and they took chances, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. So, but this is one of those movies, Mike, and I know you always roll your eyes when I get into this. It has a huge caveat. The average moviegoer, this movie is not for them. This is, it's, even though the plot is simple, the visuals, the acting choices, it's going to be really off-putting for a lot of people. So it's a see it if you're like a Tyler Vance or a Nicole.
And then for okay, so it's are you giving it a see it like for, because you're recommending it to a very specific audience
in the official,
like for you, like what would you?
Yeah, it was a see it. It was a see it for me, even though there was some times where I was like, like I had to close my eyes.
The official rating is see it, but yes, there's a large audience that are not going to like it.
You're really going to be alienated by this movie, but this movie isn't for them. Like anytime a movie is described up front as a body horror, you know that like 80% of the average population is not going to want to see it.
So here's my last question: will I like this movie?
That's a tough question, Mike. I'm going to say no. I think you're going to look at the male performances and think that it's a little bit gimmicky. I think
like, is it as bad as The Favorite? Did you see the Favorite? The one with Emma Stone and a couple other people?
Oh, I like The Favorite. So if you don't like The Favorite...
No, not in terms of the quality of the movie, like the male performances in them, because all the males in that are idiots too. Like, is it to that level where they're like purposely stupid?
It's worse. It's like,
it's worse. Okay,
like it's like, because like it's like, if you know that meme of like Dennis Quaid is here, like Ellen made him, like that's him in this movie. He's like, really we gotta get a hot thing for the shareholders. Let me smoke my cigar. It's not a normal.
That'll annoy me eventually.
Yeah, like it's not a normal performance. I'll put it that way. And like every other male that I can think of that has like lines in this movie, it's like they're idiots. It's like, and they're like, it's like bad acting on purpose. There's like there's like a next door neighbor that's like going on a tirade, and then when um Margot Qualley or whatever her name is opens the door and he realizes it's the hot version, he immediately like flips the, switches the script and is like the sleazy like, oh, go on a date with me. And again, like you're like, that's not good date, that's like not good acting.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think because I know Dennis Quaid, if Dennis Quaid wasn't in the movie and it was like a no name, I would have been like, oh, like they just got really bad actors. But Dennis Quaid is not. I wouldn't go so far as to say Dennis Quaid is like a phenomenal actor, but he certainly knows how to like
Not
have a
bad,
dialed
no.
in performance.
So it was clearly a directing
Yes,
choice,
yes.
which I don't like bad acting for the sake of bad acting. Like this is the style. We're gonna sing poorly.
Like this is a real. It was like a very David Lynch approach to directing actors, which is like very. I think the word is divisive. People often don't like David Lynch's stuff because they think the acting is bad, but he on purpose is getting those performances out of people. So for that reason, and I don't think you like body horror, Mike.
Not a huge body horror fan, not a big David Lynch fan. So
so I don't think this movie is not for you.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay, so then my last movie I saw was Pray for the Devil, which I do think came out last year, but I just saw it because it just came to Netflix. This is about sort of the first female exorcist and a school for exorcism that the Catholic Church has put together where they teach young priests, exorcism, but she's also there. It's kind of like a hospital / school where it takes place in. So basically the premise is there's this hospital / school where anyone who's potentially possessed is sent here, and it's up to them to determine if it's a possession or not.
It's a teaching hospital, Mike. That's what we would call that.
That's right. And our main
protagonist,
she's a nun, but is basically a nurse. So It explains at the beginning that the nuns basically act like nurses there, and the priests come in to determine, okay, is this a real thing, or does someone have a mental illness or some other illness? Like they actually are like, someone says 80-90% of the time it's medical,
right?
And we're just here to get them to the hospital,
right?
By easing the family's pain and like making whatever. But she's haunted by a past,
of course,
and she's here, and some sort of demon has been after her forever because her mother was possessed and took her own life.
Okay.
So her mother was possessed, and now she has always felt like this demon was actually going after her, and not the mother. Like it was within the mother, but was actually going after her. So this kind of is our main character's journey through this teaching hospital / church place that everyone lives in, just like a convent. But it's basically about her fighting to be taught exorcism because she's a woman. They won't let her, and it's basically about her wanting to get the tools to defend herself from this demon that's coming after her, and that's the premise of the movie. It starts out really, really interesting, and I feel like as a movie on its own it was actually pretty compelling, and then they were just like, yeah, but we have to have exorcism stuff happen. So just like shoehorn in some battles, like just get it in there. And it sort of interrupted the story a little bit, where I was actually really more interested in the sort of history of exorcism and her like interaction with these other priests, and like kind of going through that process as a woman trying to learn exorcism and like studying exorcism cases. That was really interesting. But they always kind of took a break to be like, oh yeah, now here's like an exorcism scary scene.
I wonder if it would have been better if they were building up to like one exorcism at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and I think they wanted to give you some like false ideas, like, oh, this is like this is the moment, but it's like, oh no, something bigger's coming. And I felt like someone on this production was like, we need more exorcisms. And they like listened to that person,
right?
Because it always felt shoehorned. Like the main story was interesting, And even what ended up happening, like there's a bit of a reveal of who someone is and a connection that was very good. Like
Mm-hmm.
it all made sense and it all kind of connected well. But I just felt like we took too many moments. Like there's literally a scene, and this is no joke, where they kind of stopped the story for her to go with this priest to randomly do an exorcism on his sister who we've never talked about. And we just sort of do that.
Right.
It's like a side quest. And there's it's because there's like a consequence to that, and that it was like supposed to be an incident that like has some consequences that sets up the third act. But
Like you went rogue.
That's right. Like you and this guy went rogue. And the priest kept making googly eyes at her, and it was just like it was a little like they were trying to force like, oh, but there could be like a love thing between these two. It never went anywhere, but it felt like someone was giving notes, being like, can't you hint that this like young attractive nun and this young priest might like, get together? Can't we just hint that? And it felt really weird. Like it just didn't fit,
well,
you know what I mean?
You know enough to know that nuns and priests should not be getting together.
That's right. And I felt like it didn't need it. Like I felt like this was a story
just tell the story, right?
That's right. And the story was, I think, better than they thought it was. Because
interesting.
The story, like her journey and even the setup of this like hospital, I would have preferred this to be the kind of thing where most of the time, like listen, there's about 4 patients that they interact with. If 3 of them were just medical cases,
sure,
and like you were saying, it led up to the big one at the end.
Yeah.
Like as an audience, have us guess. Like there's 4 of them, and set it up in a way where, oh, you know what? Actually, these aren't possession cases. And
more of the
is kind of thing.
The mystery, right? Like how I watched the first Omen movie earlier this year, or like the first Omen prequel, and like there's a little bit of you have a little bit of that. Like, is this girl possessed? Whatever. I think you can do that trope and it can work well. And it sounds like that movie, the movie you watched, Pray for the Devil, probably would have been better if they leaned in more into the mystery or like
That's right.
the natural skepticism that's kind of baked into the supernatural.
That's right. And if they played into that, I think it would have been a more compelling movie. As it stands, it kind of borderlined a little bit for me, but I think this is an airplane it because it was entertaining enough. But at the end of the day, it was kind of like, it just wasn't enough. It just didn't, I don't think it put all the pieces together. Despite some like good performances and like a really interesting main character. I liked telling that story from this nun's perspective. But I just felt like at the end of the day, I could name 3 or 4 nun movies that were just better. Like if you just want like a nun movie, like there's a bunch of other ones.
Well, I feel like all nuns movies follow the same premise. Like, oh, she had a troubled, traumatic childhood that may or may not have been demon related. She becomes a nun. That demon is still following her.
Yeah.
And then the story, the background story is all the same. I would be interested to see more non-Catholic exorcism movies. And this is, I think like the last exorcism, it's like a Baptist preacher who does the exorcisms. I don't know, like maybe I guess what I'm trying.
He doesn't think it's real either.
Yeah, great, like
so
an amazing, an amazing setup. So I don't know, like I feel like maybe the quote unquote nun story has been done to death. There also, I feel like there's been like 3 or 4 nun movies in 2024.
There's been at least 3 that I can think of.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, maybe we've done this. Like maybe we take a break. I think, Catholicism as like a framework certainly can be revisited, but let's just take a break for now and reset and maybe do a different type of exorcism story.
When I was watching it, even like I thought, oh, Taylor, you probably would like maybe 40% of this movie.
Right.
Because then it just like goes off and it just doesn't work. So yeah, I think you could expand the genre more than what it is. But yeah,
like there's
examples of it.
We're running out of time, but I would be interested to see this movie. So a couple years ago, it was during the pandemic, I was rewatching all the old Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack's. That's available on Amazon Prime. I think they're still there for people. And obviously growing up and still now, the supernatural stories were always some of my favorites. And there was a exorcism segment where it was just, I don't think the group is operational anymore, but like at the time was operational. And it was a group of this like ragtag people. They weren't directly affiliated with Catholicism. I think like they definitely were not connected to the Catholic Church. I think they had some like random Christian minister perform the exorcisms. But that would make such a compelling movie. Just this like group of random people who've come together. It could probably even be a bit of a horror comedy. And this group trying to perform exorcisms just like rogue, but like as like a scientific. Yeah. I think part of their shtick, so to speak, was that I think they were trying to like get evidence, but it's a very scary episode of Unsolved Mysteries because they show footage of one of their exorcisms. Mm-hmm. So anyways, movie people, do that, make that. I think it would make a better exorcism movie than the nun tropes that we've been getting in the past couple of years.
Yeah, get on it, movie people. Thank you everybody for listening this week. We'll be back next week. We don't know what we're watching, but we'll watch something. We'll do it again.
Go see some movies.
Thank you for listening to You Had Me at Skip It, a Soul One Arts Inc. podcast. This podcast is produced by Mike Shepard and Austin Spinner Summer. It is a project of Soul One Arts Inc. To learn more about Soul One and all the great work that Soul One is doing in the arts community, especially in film, theater, and other performing arts, visit soul1arts.ca. You can contribute to this podcast by visiting soul1arts.ca and going to the podcast tab. You'll find all the information on You Had Me at Skip It and how you can get your questions read on air each week. Thank you again for listening.